As the sun made its final, fiery bow over London, painting the sky in hues an artist might only dream of, Heathrow Airport hummed with the ceaseless energy of departure. Thousands of people, a river of diverse stories and destinations, flowed towards metal birds promising journeys across continents. Among them, moving with a quiet intention to remain unnoticed, was Keanu Reeves. A simple beanie pulled low, dark sunglasses shielding his recognizable eyes, comfortable dark clothing. He was just another traveler heading home to Los Angeles after weeks immersed in the intense, artificial world of a film set. These solo journeys were his sanctuary, a necessary escape from the constant scrutiny, the endless demands of fame. He craved the anonymity of the journey, the quiet hum of the engines, the vast expanse of the sky outside the window, a space where his thoughts could roam free. He thought about the character he'd just left behind, its darkness still clinging faintly. He thought about friends lost, the unpredictable turns of life, the strange solitude that fame sometimes amplified. This flight wasn't just about crossing the Atlantic. It was about crossing back into his own skin. He settled into his window seat in the relative calm of the business class cabin, grateful for the space and privacy it afforded. He closed his eyes, wanting to absorb the pre-flight quiet. He vaguely registered the murmur of other passengers boarding, the click of overhead bins, the polite greetings of the flight attendants. He felt someone settle into the seat next to him, but kept his eyes closed, seeking those last moments of peace. When he finally opened his eyes, he glanced sideways. An elderly woman, perhaps in her late 70s or early 80s, was carefully arranging her belongings. She wore a neat floral print dress suitable for travel, a beautifully hand-knitted shawl draped over her shoulders, suggesting a certain old-world elegance. Her silvery gray hair was pinned up meticulously. She clutched a worn but well-kept handbag tightly in her lap. Her hands, wrinkled and showing the map of a long life, trembled slightly as she tried to fasten her seatbelt. Her dark skin was smooth, her features dignified, but her eyes, they held a deep-seated anxiety as they darted nervously around the cabin. This was Ruth, a woman born in Jamaica decades ago who had built a life in London and was now embarking on perhaps the most daunting, yet most important journey of her later years. Keanu offered a polite, almost imperceptible nod. Ruth caught his eye and returned it with a quick, tight-lipped smile before her gaze returned to nervously scanning the cabin exits. As the plane doors closed and the safety briefing began, Ruth's anxiety became palpable. She gripped the armrest tightly, her knuckles white. She closed her eyes, her lips moving silently, perhaps in prayer. Keanu recognized the signs instantly: aviophobia, the fear of flying, and a profound case of it. The roar of the engines building for takeoff seemed to intensify Ruth's fear. Her breathing grew shallow. As the plane accelerated down the runway, she pressed herself back hard against the seat, letting out a tiny involuntary gasp when the wheels lifted off the ground. Keanu observed her quietly, his own past anxieties momentarily surfacing, not of flying, but of different kinds of losing control. He decided against direct intervention for now, opting instead to simply project an aura of calm beside her. Once they reached cruising altitude and the seatbelt sign switched off, the cabin lights dimmed slightly and the meal service began. Keanu ordered a simple meal and coffee. Ruth politely declined food, asking only for a glass of water with trembling hands. When the flight attendant served her, Keanu noticed the attendant's brief, perhaps slightly concerned glance at Ruth's obvious distress. Keanu tried to initiate a gentle conversation. "It's going to be a long flight," he remarked softly. Ruth opened her eyes, turning to him. Fear was still evident, but perhaps Keanu's calm voice offered a small anchor. Yes, it is," she whispered. I do hope it's a smooth one." "I'm sure it will be," Keanu replied reassuringly. "These large planes are incredibly stable." Ruth attempted another smile. "I know that in my head, you see, but my heart, it tells a different story. I haven't been on a plane in such a very long time. Is it a special occasion that brings you across the ocean after so long?" Keanu asked gently, hoping to distract her. Ruth's face transformed instantly, the anxiety momentarily eclipsed by a radiant warmth. "Oh yes," she breathed, her voice filled with sudden joy. "The most special. My granddaughter in Los Angeles. She's just had her first baby. My first great-grandchild. Pride beamed from her eyes. I simply had to come see her. I haven't flown, for over 30 years. Not since that dreadful crash, she murmured, her voice trailing off as the memory surfaced, her hand instinctively going to her chest. Keanu understood immediately. Her fear wasn't just abstract, it was rooted in something specific, something traumatic. Perhaps a flight she was on, or one she knew about, like those terrible crashes over the ocean. People still talked about sometimes. That takes incredible courage, Ruth, Keanu said with genuine admiration. To face a fear like that for your family, that's truly brave. Ruth looked down, twisting her hands in her lap. She's worth every moment of this fear. Little Lily, they named her Lily. Keanu smiled softly. A beautiful name. He thought of the quiet strength he'd seen in his own grandmother, a resilience that often lay hidden beneath a gentle exterior. Ruth possessed that same inner fortitude, currently masked by overwhelming fear. Hours passed relatively smoothly. Ruth seemed to have settled slightly, perhaps dozing lightly, though her hands never fully relaxed their grip on the armrests. They were somewhere over the mid-Atlantic, the cabin dark and quiet, when the plane suddenly gave a sharp jolt, followed by a series of jarring bumps. The seatbelt sign flashed on immediately. Ladies and gentlemen, the captain's voice, calm but more formal than before, came over the intercom. We've encountered some unexpected and significant turbulence associated with a strong weather front. Please remain seated with your seatbelts securely fastened. We may experience moderate to severe turbulence for the next 20 to 30 minutes. Cabin crew, please secure the cabin and take your seats. The words severe turbulence sent a visible shockwave through the cabin. Nervous chatter erupted. The plane began to shake more violently now, not just bumping but lurching, rolling, and occasionally dropping with a stomach-churning sensation. The sound was unnerving. The creak and groan of the fuselage, the changing pitch of the engines, the rattling from overhead bins. Outside the window, lightning illuminated monstrous dark clouds pressing against the glass. Ruth gasped loudly, her eyes flying open, wide with terror. "Oh, Lord, have mercy! No, no, no!" she started whispering, her breathing becoming rapid and shallow. "It's happening again, just like that other one. The one over the ocean, they fell." Her mind was clearly replaying a past terror, triggered by the current situation. Her panic was escalating quickly into a full-blown attack. She was trembling uncontrollably. A flight attendant, expertly navigating the swaying aisle to do a final check, saw Ruth's extreme distress. "Ma'am, try to take slow, deep breaths," she instructed firmly but kindly, leaning over briefly. "It's strong turbulence, but the aircraft is perfectly safe." Ruth didn't seem to hear her. Keanu caught the attendant's eye and gave a slight nod, indicating he would try to help. The attendant, seeing his calm demeanor, gave a grateful glance before quickly securing herself in a nearby jump seat. Keanu leaned towards Ruth, ensuring his own body language was calm and grounded. "Ruth," he said, his voice clear and steady, needing to project over the noise of the plane and her panicked breathing. "Ruth, can you hear me? Look at me." He waited patiently until her terrified, unfocused eyes met his. "Good. Now we're going to breathe together, okay? Just like me. Breathe in slowly through your nose. 1, 2, 3. Hold. Now out slowly through your mouth. 4, 5, 6. Excellent. Again. In ... The plane took another violent dip, accompanied by screams from elsewhere in the cabin. The lights flickered violently, plunging them into near darkness for a second before the emergency lights kicked in. Ruth cried out, grabbing blindly for the armrest, her knuckles white. I can't! Keanu kept his voice level. "Yes, you can, Ruth. Feel the seat beneath you. Feel my hand." He gently placed his hand over hers on the armrest, a firm, grounding pressure. "We are not falling. This is just air. The plane is flying through it. The pilots train constantly for this. They know exactly what to do. We are safe. Think about Lily," he continued, his voice a calm anchor in the storm. That tiny baby girl waiting for her great-grandmother in Los Angeles. Picture her face. You're flying to her. You're doing this for her. You're almost there. He kept talking, a steady stream of quiet reassurance, reminding her of her purpose, grounding her in the present, breathing with her. He didn't know if his words were fully registering, but his calm presence, the firm touch of his hand, seemed to provide a lifeline in her sea of panic. The severe turbulence raged for what felt like an eternity, but was likely closer to 20 minutes. Flight attendants remained strapped in, their voices occasionally coming over the PA system with calm updates. Finally, almost imperceptibly at first, the violent shaking began to lessen. The jarring drops became less frequent. The rattling subsided. The plane gradually stabilized. The captain's voice came on again, sounding relieved. "Ladies and gentlemen, we appear to be through the worst of the turbulence. We apologize again for the discomfort. We'll keep the seatbelt sign on for a little while longer as a precaution." A collective sigh of relief went through the cabin. Ruth was slumped back in her seat, utterly drained, still trembling slightly, but her breathing was almost back to normal. Her grip on Keanu's hand loosened, though she didn't let go completely for another minute or two. She slowly opened her eyes, which were red-rimmed and exhausted. She looked at Keanu, her expression filled with a mixture of exhaustion and profound gratitude. I truly don't know how I would have," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Thank you. You were so calm. You kept me here." She touched her chest lightly. Keanu offered a small, tired smile back. "You were incredibly brave, Ruth. You faced it down," he said gently. "I'm just glad I could sit here with you." They didn't speak much after that, a comfortable silence settling between them, forged in the shared experience of fear and calm. The remainder of the flight passed uneventfully. As the plane began its final descent into Los Angeles, Ruth looked out the window, her earlier anxiety replaced by quiet anticipation. The vast sprawl of the city lights glittered below. The plane landed smoothly. As they taxied towards the gate, Ruth turned to Keanu one last time. "I will never, ever forget your kindness today, young man. May God bless you." They walked together through the jet bridge and into the bustling terminal. Keanu helped Ruth with her carry-on bag. As they entered the arrivals hall, a young woman rushed forward, followed by a young man pushing a stroller. "Grandma!" the young woman cried, enveloping Ruth in a tight hug. "We were so worried. They announced severe turbulence on the flight tracker. Are you okay?" "I'm fine now, child. Perfectly fine," Ruth assured her, holding her close, tears of relief now streaming down her face. The granddaughter then looked past Ruth and saw Keanu standing politely a few steps back. Her jaw dropped. She blinked, looked again, then back at her grandmother, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Oh, my gosh," she whispered, nudging her grandmother slightly. "Grandma, look, the man who was sitting next to you, that's Keanu Reeves." Ruth turned, confused at first, then looked properly at the man who had held her hand through the terrifying flight. In the bright lights of the terminal, without the beanie and sunglasses, she saw him clearly for the first time. Her eyes widened in stunned recognition. The kind stranger, the calm voice, the Keanu Reeves. Keanu saw the realization dawn on her face. He met her gaze from across the small distance separating them in the busy hall. He offered a small, almost imperceptible nod and a gentle, kind smile, a silent acknowledgement. Then, before the granddaughter's excitement could draw more attention, before anyone else noticed, Keanu gave a final, subtle wave and turned, melting seamlessly into the flow of travelers heading towards baggage claim, disappearing as quietly as he had appeared beside her on the plane. Ruth watched him go, speechless for a moment. She turned back to her granddaughter, who was still starstruck, and tears welled up again. Tears of astonishment, deep gratitude, and quiet wonder. "Yes, child," she whispered, a slow smile spreading across her face. "Yes, he was." Later, sitting in the back of a car leaving LAX, Keanu looked out at the palm trees silhouetted against the California sky. He felt a quiet sense of satisfaction, mixed with the usual fatigue after a long flight. The encounter with Ruth lingered in his mind. Her profound fear, her quiet determination, her immense courage in undertaking that journey for her great-grandchild. It was humbling. He thought about the strange intimacy forged in shared vulnerability, thousands of feet above the ocean. It wasn't about fame. It wasn't about movie roles. It was simply about human connection, about offering a steady presence when someone else felt like they were falling. Perhaps, he mused, the most significant journeys weren't always the ones we planned, but the ones where we allowed ourselves to truly connect with a fellow traveler, offering a quiet hand in the turbulence of life. This story reminds us that even in the most unexpected moments, we can be a source of hope for someone else. Have you ever had a fear you had to overcome for someone you love?